Dr. Ilara Voss arrived in Greyhaven under cover of fog thick enough to muffle the whistle of the incoming tide. The windshield of the rental van beaded with salt, and she had to squint to see the leaning street lamps that marked the single coastal road. The town looked half-drowned, shingled roofs canted like lifeboats, sea spray whitening the windows. To Ilara, who had not treated a patient in 2 years and who had chosen Greyhaven precisely for its obscurity, the place felt perfect. Nobody here would know the celebrated sleep therapist who had once lectured on pulse theta entrainment at Johns Hopkins, or the sister whose death had sent her spiraling into self-imposed exile. The realtor handed her a key, muttered something about power lines, and vanished. By evening, Ilara was alone in a clapboard house at the bluff's edge, listening to the gulls and the ticking of her own portable metronome, an old habit for resetting circadian cues. She planned a small practice, nothing demanding, a few consultations on insomnia, some gentle cognitive repatterning, enough to pay bills and keep the mind occupied. Instead, Greyhaven came to her in one panic wave. The first was Jonah Marrow, bartender, eyes red-veined after a week of sleeplessness. "It's the same dream every time," he said, twisting a bottle cap into a spiral. "A woman walking into the sea. Her dress is too thin for November. She turns, and water spills out of her mouth." Ilara kept her expression clinical until Jonah added, "She has your face, Doc, only smaller." He held palms a few inches apart, the universal gesture for identical siblings. A coincidence, she told herself. But within days, 3 more patients emerged. A postal clerk, a high school teacher, the widowed lighthouse caretaker. All described the same nocturnal tableau. Fog, shoreline, and a woman with storm-gray eyes who stepped into black water and whispered, "Find me." They used words Ilara had thought buried with her twin Liana's private lexicon of childhood secrets. Gum anchors, mirror knots, swallow stares. None of these clients had ever met Liana. Many had never left Greyhaven. Ilara set up a map of the town on her dining room wall, red pins for each patient, yarn linking them to their reported dream times. The threads formed a net that tightened nightly. Whatever was happening here, it was collective, structured, and growing. There existed only one technique sophisticated enough to parse a community nightmare, and it had been outlawed after the Baltimore trials. Intersubjective dream merging via neural phase locking, colloquially. Stitching. Ilara still owned a prototype of the HypnoSync Halo, a gleaming band of electrodes and quantum randomizers stored under lock in a steel case. It was evidence from a life she had renounced. Using it would cost her license, maybe her freedom. Yet every call from Greyhaven Hospital, patients collapsing from exhaustion, murmuring Liana's name, gnawed at her culpability. Her first volunteer was Jonah. They met after midnight in her living room, shades drawn, breakers thudding against the rocks below. "Side effects?" he asked, examining the halo. "Temporary disorientation, memory bleed, nausea," Ilara recited. She omitted the hemorrhages recorded in unredacted trial notes. "You'll follow my voice, nothing else." Jonah nodded, and she secured the band around both their temples. Biogel cooled her skin. She calibrated their REM potentials, watched the sine wave oscillations align, 2 metronomes swinging into perfect synchrony. Then she spoke the induction phrase that Liana had composed for their undergrad experiments. "Mirror, open." The fog took her before she finished. Dream Greyhaven resembled its waking counterpart, but the colors were drained, as if the town floated inside a glass bottle filled with seawater and milk. Ilara and Jonah stood on the strand, bare feet sinking into sand cold as metal. Jonah blinked at his hands, surprised by his lucidity. "So it's real," he murmured. Something appeared beyond the surf, a woman's silhouette, hair plastered to her cheek. Ilara's heart lurched. "Liana?" She started forward, but Jonah caught her wrist. "Look," he whispered. From the clouds descended strings, silver filaments luminous against the night. They hooked into Liana's shoulders, elbows, knees, marionette wires tugging her limbs. Each jerk dragged her nearer to the sea. Liana's face twisted toward Ilara, lips parting, voice gargling with salt water. "He's sleeping under the lighthouse." Then she was yanked beneath the waves. Ilara broke connection in a spasm of vertigo. She and Jonah ripped the halo off, panting, temple electrodes sparking. Blood trickled from Jonah's nose. "You saw her?" he asked, trembling. When Ilara nodded, he sagged with a relief that bordered on ecstasy. Validation mattered more than terror, but Ilara replayed the phrase, "He's sleeping under the lighthouse," and heard a warning rather than a clue. She spent the next day combing municipal archives. Greyhaven's lighthouse, obsolete since GPS beacons, now housed radio equipment owned by the town council. According to maintenance logs, only one person had authority to operate the generator: Ephraim Keene, the widowed caretaker who had visited her office 3 nights prior. He'd been reticent, eyes hollow from insomnia. Ilara, scribbling directions to a pharmacy, had noticed a silver key around his neck bearing the lighthouse insignia. At dusk, she hiked the winding staircase to Keene's quarters. The lantern room glowed fire red, Fresnel lens rotating over a sea lost to fog. She found Keene seated at an antique console patched with modern fiber lines. Oscilloscopes fluttered, a low infrasound throb pressed against her chest. Keene looked up with the helpless guilt of a child caught rewinding the same nightmare on loop. "I tried to stop," he whispered before she spoke, "but they keep dreaming her." Ilara surveyed the machines. Some she recognized, transcranial resonance amplifiers, illegal since the trials. Others were cobbled from ham radio parts and fishing boat sonar. A patch cable snaked down through a rusted grate toward the lighthouse foundation below that the catacombs carved by 19th century smugglers. "You're broadcasting," Ilara said, horrified, using infrasonic standing waves to entrain the town's REM cycles. Keene nodded. "I only meant to help." He gestured toward a photograph taped to the console, his daughter Mara, maybe 10 years old, eyes purpled by exhaustion. She had night terrors. Conventional therapy failed. "Then your sister." He paused, as if weighing belief against confession. "Your sister came to me in a dream. She said, 'Build the gate, and I'll keep Mara safe.'" Ilara's pulse hammered. "Liana is dead." "Dead in body," Keene conceded, "but minds leave footprints, don't they? Greyhaven's an old place. Its bedrock carries voices." He tapped the console. "This amplifies them." She scanned the frequency readout. 0.9 hertz. The corner of her memory twitched. The precise delta rhythm recorded from Liana's brain the night she died. A motor vehicle collision that left only desiccated EEG traces before flatline. Ilara had stored the data on a lab server, encrypted. But a year later, that server was hacked by parties never identified. "You stole my sister's neural signature?" she whispered. Keene's face crumpled. "I copied what was offered. She guided my hands." His fingers hovered over a kill switch. "I can shut it down, but the dreamer pulling the strings, whoever they are, will find another conduit. Mara might never wake again." From the grate came a faint hum too, low to hear but felt as vibration in teeth fillings. Ilara pictured the catacombs. Cool tunnels intersecting fault lines that could channel sound waves for miles. Someone or something was nested below, orchestrating. She had a choice: destroy the machinery and risk throwing the town into psychic withdrawal, or descend and confront the puppeteer. She chose descent. Keene passed her the silver key and murmured, "Mind the water." The stairwell spiraled down, lantern light shrinking above. Damp air chilled her throat. The infrasonic pulse deepened until her vision swam. She activated her wrist EEG, saw delta spikes cresting as if her brain fought to enter microsleep while awake. She bit her tongue to stay conscious. The catacombs smelled of iron and brine. Corridors branched like capillaries, some flooding with tidal seep. Strings of photovoltaic bulbs lit a trail toward a cavern, where cables converged into a nest of bronze plates. Above them, suspended in a web of electrodes, floated a deprivation tank, an oval coffin half submerged in black water. Ilara crept closer. Inside the tank a man lay motionless, scalp shaved, eyelids flicking, REM. Tubes fed oxygen, intravenous bags glimmered. His face was familiar from conferences. Dr. Callum Bristow, Neuroscientist once hailed as a genius of collective cognition before his disappearance amid ethics charges. He was the architect of the very technology Ilara had renounced. Bristow wasn't merely sleeping, he was steering. Every breath synced with a waveform fed to the lighthouse amplifiers. On a pedestal beside the tank sat a data crystal labeled Liana_Voss_EEG_master. Rage flared, clean and lethal. Ilara yanked the crystal free. Bristow convulsed, mouth opening in a silent scream, though eyes remained shut. The overhead speakers crackled, and through them issued Liana's voice, not recorded, but alive with adaptive inflection. "Sister, don't." Ilara froze. The voice softened. "It's safe here. He built us shoreline sea songs. You can stay." Memories flooded. Liana at 12, skipping stones. Liana at 20, dissecting EEG graphs with giddy precision. Liana on that final morning, texting Ilara to pick up Thai food. Grief roared like surf. "This isn't you," Ilara whispered. "But you're good at home." "It's what's left," the voice replied. "Bristow gave me bodies to borrow. I soothe the town's hurts. I give them common ground. You give them terror," Ilara shot back. "They're unraveling. Fear unites faster than love. Bristow knows the math." The voice grew wistful. "But I'm tired, El. Take his place. Guide them someplace gentle." Ilara's legs trembled. Could she? For years she'd hidden from patients because their traumas echoed her own. Yet here was an entire town pleading for shepherding and a twin begging for release. She weighed the halo in her backpack. The portable rig could interface with Bristow's system. She could slip into the Nexus, override the nightmares, ease everyone out. But withdrawal might kill Bristow, and the legal fallout would implode her life. A faint splash behind, Keen stood at the threshold, lips bluish, clutching a crowbar. "Lines are spiking," he warned. "Town's falling into mass paralysis. You need to decide." Ilara inhaled the metallic air. The decision crystallized. Not flight, not surrender, but atonement. "Help me move him," she told Keen. They hoisted Bristow onto the cavern floor, disconnecting tubes. His vitals fluttered, but held. Ilara seated herself inside the tank, water lapping her ribs, donned the halo and fixed a secondary headset to Bristow's temples, an external piggyback. She rigged the lighthouse feed to pump her own EEG as carrier, Bristow's as dependent. Then she pressed record on a fresh crystal labeled Greyhaven_release. To Keen she said, "When I signal, cut the mains and flood the catacombs. Salt water's a natural Faraday cage." He nodded, grip whitening on the lever. Ilara lay back, the lids sealed, plunging her into darkness thick as velvet. She whispered the phrase once more. Mirror, open, and dropped inward. She found herself atop Greyhaven's cliff under a bruised sky. Below, hundreds of dreamers stood in tide pools, each tethered by silver strings to a titanic marionette made of fog and starlight. Liana's form magnified until it dwarfed the lighthouse. Bristow loomed beside her, a puppeteer's cross clutched in each fist, guiding strings that merged into a braid leading to his own heart. Ilara stepped forward. The cliff's edge morphed beneath her feet into the mahogany stage of their childhood puppet theater, where they once performed fairy tales for parents on rainy evenings. She called Liana. The colossus turned, eyes luminous. "Let go," Ilara pleaded. "You don't need him. You don't need them." Fogliana opened her hands. A silver locket, Liana's, found crushed in the rack, appeared. Ilara reached, but Bristow jerked the strings, twisting Liana's limbs into knots. Dreamers below screamed, mirror knots, swallow stares, echoing into cacophony. Ilara saw the solution as clearly as her own pulse. She couldn't slice every string, but she could sever the source. Her shared guilt with Liana, that unresolved need to keep each other breathing. She clutched the locket, felt its edge bite skin, and whispered, "I release you." The locket burst, spilling light that flooded the sky, bleaching the fog, unraveling the strings. Liana's colossus dissolved into gulls. Bristow shrank, arms spasming as control vanished. The dreamers wavered like candle flames and woke. In the cavern, alarms screamed. Elara surfaced, gasping brine. Keen pulled the lever. Salt water rushed through sluice gates, shorting circuits in a crackle of sparks. The infrasonic throb died mid-pulse. Bristow jerked awake, coughed seawater, stared at Elara with feral betrayal. "You have no idea what you've destroyed," he rasped. She met his glare, sea spray running down her face like tears. "I do. That's why I destroyed it." Sirens wailed topside. The foghorn reactivated automatically once power cut, summoning Coast Guard. Keeney fled to fetch Mara. Bristow sagged, defeated. Elara, muscles trembling from post-hematonia, crawled onto a slab of basalt. She expected grief to swamp her, but instead felt a spacious quiet. Liana's presence had receded, not vanished like a shell returned to sand. When rescuers hauled them out, dawn was staining the fog peach gold. Around town, residents emerged from houses, dazed, yet rested for the first time in weeks. Jonah found Elara on the seawall, blankets draped over shoulders, and asked, "Is it over?" "Nightmares aren't over," she said, "but that one is." A Coast Guard medic tried to usher her into an ambulance, but she waved them off. The lighthouse lamp extinguished as sunrise claimed its duty. Greyhaven inhaled, exhaled. Weeks passed. Federal agents seized Bristow's equipment. Charges were filed under the Neural Sovereignty Act. Keene faced inquiries but kept his post. Townsfolk defended him as a grieving father misled by promises of salvation. Elara testified, surrendered the halo, and forfeited her license. Headlines cast her as whistleblower and accomplice, both hero and criminal. She accepted the contradictions. What mattered were the subtle changes. Fewer red-rimmed eyes at the grocery, laughter echoing off docks. Children no longer drew drowning women in art class. On the day her probation terms arrived, Elara walked the beach alone. Fog drifted, translucent as gauze. She closed her eyes, listening. No infrasonic pulse, just heartbeats, tide beats, the living hush. A gull shrieked overhead. For one unsure instant, she swore she heard her twin's voice riding the wind. "Sleep well, Elle." Elara smiled, tears saltier than the sea, and whispered to the waves, "Dream free." Then she turned inland, toward a town waking into its own quiet morning, and followed the worn footpath home.